Growing up in the desert has its own unique aesthetic. I was raised in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, where the yards are filled with gravel instead of grass because nothing grows. And we have these little mini tornadoes called dust devils that will pop up and disappear within 10 minutes. And we all sit around calmly while giant walls of dust approach our city and turn the air orange or even black. So it only fits that I would love something as strange as Salvation Mountain. And I don't know where I first heard about Salvation Mountain, but I knew it was this giant painted thing in the middle of the desert somewhere between Arizona and California. And I'd always tried to convince my parents to take us there on our way back from LA. But they were always like, no, it's too far, maybe you made it up, maybe it doesn't exist. And luckily, I convinced my friend Susan to stop there on our way back from LA in our first 19-year-old independent adult road trip. So halfway between Phoenix and LA, we took this little turn off the highway on this 2-lane dust-covered road, and our radio completely shut out. So we were just listening to Life of Pablo on repeat. And the first thing we passed was this sea. And I know what a mirage looks like. This was not a mirage. We were in the middle of the desert. It was our little 2-lane highway and then maybe 20 yards of desert shrubs and water until the next mountain range. We passed by a series of abandoned trains covered in wild-style, illegible graffiti. And the only thing that I could read was this quickly sprayed black paint that said, "God was here." We didn't see a single person the entire way out there. There was nobody driving on the road. There was all sorts of evidence that people should be there but weren't, like this empty RV park with only rotting palm trees standing in the sunlight. There was a border patrol post, which was odd because we weren't that close to the border, with nobody standing outside. We passed through this tiny town, and when I say town, that's probably an exaggeration because it was maybe like 7 houses that had no signs of life around. There was even a boarded up grocery store covered in tiny tags, like graffiti tags. There was a recycling plant that was long since shut down with Greek columns put on the front of it, and a power plant that looked deserted. We passed by this giant cement box with a door and little windows cut into the side of it that I later found out was an abandoned guard post. It was covered from top to bottom in graffiti with things like, "Question everything, leave your baggage here," or "Slab City, last free place in America," and giant colorful eyes staring at us as we drove by. And finally, Salvation Mountain rose up out of the ground in front of us, this mixture of swirling colors, pinks and blues and rainbows. And as we got out of the car into the 112-degree heat, there was no sound at all, from no wind from the highway, no animals that we could tell, just the noise of this little boy who rode up on a bicycle, barefoot, and started walking around, covered in dirt. Needless to say, Susan brought her scissors when we left the car, just in case we got in some trouble. Now, the Salvation Mountain itself is this passion project of this guy, Leonard Knight, who moved out to the middle of the desert in the 60s, I think, and worked on building this until the day he died in like 2014. So he dedicated his life to this thing. The main facade is a mixture of colors and textures and flowers, and it says, there's a big red heart in the middle of it that says God is love, and it's decorated with all sorts of Bible quotes. There's a giant white cross sticking out of the top of it, and it's made entirely out of adobe clay and hay, and everything that's painted is raised up with clay so that when I ran my hands over it, I could feel the letters sticking out. And when I went to go sit on this little yellow path running up the side of the facade, I burned my legs because it had been sitting under the sun its entire existence. And around the sides of the mountain, Knight had built these 3 little grottos on one side that were like meant to be like shrines, but instead of icons and candles, it was random junk like a children's trophy stuck into the sides of the wall, and little molded clay flowers creeping up the sides. And across from that was a larger grotto with an unfinished ceiling that was covered in flowers and trees and rainbows, like walking through a meadow but on acid. And he'd taken his award from when it was made a folk site in like the 80s and stuck it into the side of the wall so that everybody could see it when they visited. And as we left, we made sure to write our names on the back of the guard post in nail polish, Vivo and Sue's, so that we could contribute to the art. We also decided to stop at the sea, more for Susan's sake than for mine, because I'm terrified of water. I barely got out of the car. And she went up to the shore and just started screaming and yelling and saying my name, and Genevieve, the fish, the fish. And it turns out she was surrounded by mounds of dead fish that were just rotting in the sun with their eyes completely gone. Apparently, the sea level had gone down dramatically at some point, and they were just everywhere. So that was when we decided it was time to go home and get some Starbucks. Even after that, though, I couldn't get the thought of this mountain out of my head. Such a strange experience. So I looked up Salvation Mountain and found out that the area it's on is called Slab City. It's an abandoned military base that was taken over by squatters in like the 60s and 70s. And it existed before Leonard Knight even got there to build this mountain. It's full of all sorts of people who are like stuck in this point in their lives and tired of the government and tired of society, who come there for a little bit for some sort of reprieve. Like this IT guy from Silicon Valley who quit his job and moved out there and built his own AC system out of a bunch of random junk. And they throw a prom every year, like with all of the stuff that they find in the garbage from the surrounding towns. And it was so interesting to me that Salvation Mountain is such like a pilgrimage site for art and religion, but the only signs of it that you could see were a little boy and a sign on a guard post that said, "Slab City, last free place, leave your baggage here."